my presentation is let us study and let us share what's so special about the Sabbath anyway. I noticed that in our magazine, The Adventist World, you can see the message there, hope in a hectic world. So I believe that each and every one of you, including the young ones, that you are actually in this world, living in this world that is with such an intense rhythm of life, and we are caught in a flurry and frenzy of daily life. That includes our work, our job, doing the assignments, learning, trying to do some exams, all those things. We are just getting caught. And to add to that, our life is also filled with material clutter. Tell me about, whoever, one of you that only owns materials that can only fit in 2 bags. Well, yeah, I'm sad because I remember the very first time, or the first time that I came to Australia, since I was, I came from the Philippines to Australia, all my possessions can actually just fit 2 bags. And that's just what I have. But now, just the books alone is just terrible. It's just, I'm being filled with clutter. And also, we are actually suffering from the tyranny of the urgency of things. Many of you people who are working in the office, don't you notice that when somebody comes up to you and email you and saying, hey, I need this now, I need this now. I used to work as an accountant in a commercial company. And my last role is as a commercial analyst. And every time I open an email, every time, it's somebody who's asking me to do things that they wanted to have been get yesterday. So, you see, I am really constantly struggling with this urgency of things that I need to do. And from all that, we are caught with our lives trying to seek meaning and trying to seek rest. What does it mean? What does it all mean? And sometimes, here you go. Thank God. God is working. Sometimes we actually struggle to keep the Sabbath. And what it's all about, we actually struggle to understand what's the Sabbath is all about. And growing up in traditional Adventism, sometimes it's far off and it's all about rules. It's like the 10 Commandments. Don't do this, don't do that. And the Sabbath is included in that. It's all about rules. For some of us, sometimes it's about just physical rest, particularly for those of you who work in sort of more physical sort of jobs. And I remember when I first came to Australia, my first job was a janitor. As a janitor, I was a cleaner. And every Sabbath, I just go, oh, thank God that I can rest from like Monday to Friday mopping the floors. And to me, it happened. It becomes just a recovery time. And for others, some Adventists, and sometimes they're not Adventists, it's about play. It's about the things that they wanted to do other than what they normally do throughout the week. But most of all, sometimes the Sabbath is actually mostly about us. So is it really about us? Probably we kind of miss understanding what the Sabbath is truly all about. Listen to this. The Sabbath, if we read it in the book of Genesis, just like young Abe just read to us, was actually instituted not when the people from Sinai crossed the desert. It's actually instituted during the creation week. And it says, I'm just going to repeat what Abraham read. He says, and on the 7th day, God ended his work, which he had done. And he what? He rested on the Sabbath day from all his work, which he had done. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work, which God had created and made. You see, one of the writers, a current sort of top Adventist scholar, actually, when he read this verse, he said, this is when the spectacular entry of Sabbath came. He described it as a spectacular entry. Now I was thinking, why is that? Why would he call it a spectacular entry? You know, have you noticed when you read the accounts of creation, and then God said, you know, he did this and he did that, but then again at the end of it he goes, in the evening, in the morning, that was the first day. But then again, the very first thing that the writer, or Moses, the writer of the book of Genesis said, he didn't go over the evening and the morning. He just called it the seventh day. You know, because that word day in Hebrew means yom. That's what it means, the evening and the morning. You know, but one thing that really stood out to me when I was studying this, because in the space of two verses, the Sabbath was mentioned how many? 3 times. You know, it says there, and on the 7th day. And then later on, he says he rested on the 7th day. And then finally, God blessed the 7th day and he sanctified it. You see, this is the sort of language that makes it different from the other creation events. And that's why it was actually introduced with a consciousness of how the language is formed. And it's with unusual solemnity. It seems to me that Moses is trying very hard to stamp the Sabbath day or the 7th day in the minds of the people who will be reading the Torah, or, you know, the book of Moses. And here's the good news. A lot of other Christians are actually finding this out now. And many of their scholars are saying that, hey, this thing is really true and we need to study it. We need to know all about it. One of the writers says, the very first thing that was sanctified or set aside for holy use in all of the Bible, and thus acquiring that special status that belongs to God alone, was time, was the 7th day. You see, in this way, Genesis emphasizes the sacredness of the 7th day Sabbath. So what does that mean? The Sabbath in creation, time was actually the first thing that was sanctified. Time was the first thing that was sanctified. Why do you think that God sanctified time the very first thing? Well, because aside from death, time is the ultimate equalizer. Time catches up to everyone. Whether you're young, you're old, whether you're rich or you're poor, time catches up to everyone. You know, God didn't sanctify a certain place or a certain item so that they will be holy relics, but He did. He sanctified a piece of time so that everyone will have access to it. You see, the benefit and the blessing of the Sabbath day, was why He set it aside, is actually not just for Seventh-day Adventists. It's not yet. It's actually for everyone. It's actually for everyone. And bless our God, who is a mighty creator and a loving God, that now more and more people are understanding this, more and more. And that's why I believe that the Lord's coming is actually just on the door. It's on the door. So let me just think about why God has given us the Sabbath. Why God has given us the Sabbath. So what is the purpose of the Sabbath? You see, if we know the why, if we know why God gave us the Sabbath, then I believe we won't have any problems on keeping it. We won't have any difficulty or any sort of trouble in trying to keep it. Because, hey, who's had problems keeping the Sabbath? You know, I look at my hand, it's up. Because when I was younger, when I was these guys, when my grandma said, you can't play, well, if I played, oh, I'm going to get the stick. And I'll tell you a story, and this is a true story, happened to some of my church members back in Sydney. Tongans is like Filipino, it's particularly the old-timers. If the grandma say you're going to get the stick, you're really going to get it. One day, one grandma said, you guys are sick? Okay, I understand that. And you can skip the Sabbath for today, and I'm going to go to the Sabbath. But if you open the TV, you guys are going to get the stick. So the grandma went to Sabbath alone. Guess what the younger guys did? They opened the TV. Because they know, the time of the Sabbath, when the Sabbath is going to start and when it's going to end. And these guys think they're smart. So they said, 10 minutes, the grandma's going to come home soon. So they turn off the TV. But guess what? The grandma's smarter. She felt the TV and it was warm and she knew. She knew that the guys opened the TV and guess what happened? They got the stick. And, one of the guys said, up to this day, I can still remember because my left arm is never the same after that. So, and that's kind of left him an impression. So why? What is the purpose of the Sabbath? Friends, the Sabbath is actually designed precisely to convey God's presence in this period of time. This is the sense, particularly, why us people, we need the Sabbath, because it reminds us that God's presence is really felt, particularly when we think that He is absent. And this is why, week after week, we need to feel God's presence. And also, God is actually the primary subject of the Sabbath. It's not the time, it's not the blessing, but actually Sabbath is pointing to God. It draws our attention to the subject, which is God, that is more important to itself. So we know that the Sabbath is important. We know that it is such a blessing to keep it. But more important than that, it points us to something that's even more important to the Sabbath, and that is God. You see, the Sabbath will not wait for anyone to unearth or rediscover its treasure before releasing its blessing. Because sometimes we think that, if I keep the Sabbath, God will bless me. No, God does not think that way. It is in God's character to actually do the first move. And that's why He blessed us with the Sabbath day, because He knew that we really need it. You see, He did it first. He blessed us right away by creating the Sabbath. Not that, we're saying, God, we're tired, we need the Sabbath. He didn't do it. He didn't do it that way. He gave us the Sabbath right then and there. Even before He told us to actually work. So, like what I said, it conveys God's presence. It actually draws attention to God Himself. And finally, it symbolizes God's blessing and God's love for us. So, as a symbol, it tells us about human and divine relationship. And that's what the Sabbath is actually telling us all about. It's the human and divine relationship. It's more than a sign. It's actually a symbol. So let me tell you about the difference between a sign and a symbol. So, to any one of you who's driving, when you see the red triangle and the circle inside it, what does that mean? So give way, yeah? Yeah, the red triangle is give way, but there's a circle inside it. It's a roundabout. Yeah, there's a roundabout ahead. But when you actually went into roundabout and did your turn or everything, is the sign inside the roundabout? No, because the sign is actually before. It's actually telling you that there is a roundabout up ahead. But the symbol is different. The symbol is different. I'll tell you how different it is. Anyone knows this? The young guys. You know what this represents? Yeah, it represents a country, right? But what does each of the thing represent? The three stars represents what? Yep. The 8 rays represents the 8 provinces who fought against the Spaniard. How about the blue? Peace, truth, and justice. How about the red? Bravery, valor. Well, how about the triangle? How about the triangle? Who knows about the triangle? Well, the triangle represents the equality of all people. You see, the flag is not just a sign. It's a symbol of a group of people. It's a symbol of the group of people. Well, I wish the symbol is actually true, because I wish there's actually equality. But sadly, we know that the case is different. But the symbol is actually participating on the actual events. You know, when the people see, they're coming off from the airport and they see the flag, they would know that there's a Filipino after the flag, yeah? But still, the flag is always there, because it is a symbol of the people that you're actually interacting with. It is a symbol of the people you're interacting with in that particular country. You see, like the flag, the 7th day belongs and participates in underlying reality. It's happening now, like the flag. It participates with the power and the dignity of the nation, which is, like the Philippines was what the flag represents. So therefore, it cannot be replaced. Even after the Japanese occupation, did we replace the flag? No. Even after we had changes in government, did we replace the flag? No, because it represents the people of the country. You say, therefore, it's the same with the Sabbath. The Sabbath is actually representing the divine and human relationship. And it's also there. And it's happening in underlying reality, the reality that is happening now. And that's why it is true all the time. So, what does the Sabbath tell us about God? What does the Sabbath tell us about the God who created us? Firstly, well, obviously, he tells us that God is a creator. And creation, we have to understand it as God's achievement alone. He has the exclusive prerogative of creation. That means the only being, the only person that can ever create anything is only God. And the 7th day is an immediate fact of creation. That means it belonged to it. It completed it. And it looks forward as an indicator of permanence. And in other words, it tells us that it is a permanent statement to say that it's only God who can create. No one else. No one else. The devil tried to copy it, but can the devil create? No. He can give you illusions that he can, but he can never do it. Secondly, the Sabbath tells us that we worship a personal God with a purpose. Because resting and stopping and completion tells us of a definite purpose and tells us of somebody who is doing things as a person. You see, the rest on the 7th day serves an expression more of God's personhood compared to his infinite power. This actually tells us that God longs for relationship. God longs to interact with his creation. So spending a shared time with someone, and that's what he's looking forward to. You see, when Kristen and I were dating, because I live in Australia when we started dating, and she's still back in Manila. She's working as a systems analyst. It's just that one time in a year, 4 weeks in a year, that I can go and visit her, and we share that time. We went out together, we eat together, we I make her laugh a lot of times. And that sharing time actually creates relationship.